This is Love Notes, daily devotions from Holy Trinity Lutheran Church. Grace and peace to you. Well, the good news for today is that Elihu has stopped talking in the book of Job. That's right, Elihu has finally run out of words, and we come to chapter 38 where God speaks. Now, the fact that God speaks right after Elihu is done is kind of a statement of things in and of itself. Remember that the last things Elihu left us with was to tell Job that God didn't have to answer his questions, that God didn't even care about the righteous or the evil, that God was so far off that God was disconnected from human life and so wouldn't even ponder the things that Job has been saying, so he should just be quiet. And now God answers. That kind of takes Elihu's entire argument, all the chapters of it, and throws it out the window. God speaks. It says in verse 1, "Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind." The word here, Lord, is Yahweh, the divine name of God in the Old Testament, which is not spoken in of itself. The word Adonai is used, which we translate Lord. So whenever you see Lord, probably capitalized in your Bible, it means that Yahweh has been used. The interesting thing is we haven't used that name for God throughout most of the book, not since the prologue. That means that none of the people who came and tried to lecture and teach Job used the actual divine name of God. Now God shows up. And Job is answered out of the whirlwind. The whirlwind is, in the Old Testament especially, a sign of the presence of God. It's a revelation of God. Sometimes it's an image of powerful judgment. Sometimes it is God passing by, like God passes by Elijah as he hides in the mountain. In Elijah's end, as the whirlwind gathers and scoops Elijah up in a fiery chariot and takes him off to heaven. Sometimes the whirlwind is pictured in the book of Exodus as the pillar of cloud and fire that leads the people through the wilderness. It is the presence of God in all its power and awesome might. And so it's out of that whirlwind, that theophany, that appearance of God, that the Lord now answers Job. Now in verse 2 it says, "Who is this that darkens counsel by words without knowledge?" Now scholars note here that asking "who is this" could be an ironic twist. God knows that it's Job who's been asking all of the questions, but God's also been privy to the argument between Job and his friends. Is he talking to Job or his friends here? Who is this that darkens counsel, obscures counsel and wisdom by words without knowledge? Who's the one who doesn't seem to know anything? Is it Job? That's hard to take. God has decided to answer Job. It could be that this is addressed as much to Job and his friends, or his friends, as anything else. It doesn't really matter, because the content of the message is what we want to drill into today. It says, "Gird up your loins like a man." That's a saying in ancient times that simply meant to bring your strength to bear. Be ready. Stiffen up your back, have all your preparation done, because now I'm going to talk and you're going to listen. We're back kind of in a courtroom situation. The cross-examination or the defense presentation is about to begin. "I will question you, and you shall declare to me." In other words, you've been asking questions all this time, and now we're back to thinking this could be about Job. Now you will declare to me. God then asks the questions, "Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. course, the understanding is I wasn't there at all. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know that, don't you? No, I don't. There's going to be a pattern of questions that God is going to put in different forms all throughout this long response. It's going to ask, who are you, Job? Who are you, all the others? Secondly, where are you? And third, are you able? On the one hand, there's simple answers to these questions. Who are you? Well, I'm not God. That's something that we always have to make sure we understand, because that's the nature of sin, especially in the Old Testament, is that when we start to think that we know the answers, well, that's when we get messed up, and that's where Job's friends have gone wrong. Who are you? You're not God. Secondly, where are you? You're in time and you're in ashes and dust. You're in the present moment. I've been everywhere forever. Are you able? Are we able to be God? No. Now, the other side of this question is these are the questions that give life depth. It is through reflection on the questions of who are we, where are we in the cosmos, in the world, in space, in time, and what are we able to do? Those three questions are what give us a sense of meaning and purpose. They are the cornerstone of a contemplative approach to life, where we keep chewing on what it means to be who we are, where we are, and what we're supposed to do. So the answers are simple on the one hand, but they are the cornerstone of the most deep questions that we ask. And Job has asked them for the purpose of depth, not simple understanding. There's kind of a subversive quality to what God is going to say, because it's going to turn on its head all of the things that his friends have presented thus far. Now, beginning next in verse 8 and following, creation is reasserted. If we think back to the first chapter of Genesis, there's kind of an order of things. There's chaos and water, and then water is divided from land, and then plants and animals, and there's an order to things. That order is going to structure the answer that God gives. God is going to work through all of the dimensions of creation that God has been involved in. Who shut up the sea with doors when it burst forth from the womb? Who, when I made the clouds its garment and the thick darkness its swaddling band, prescribed bounds for it and set bars on the doors. Ancient people understood that the sea needed to be tamed. It needed to be controlled. Land was the way that the gods did that. And the Creator God separated things so that people could live on dry land and that the ocean would stay in its place. There's an assertion here also of the divine credentials. I did this and you didn't. I am the Creator, you are not. It continues through to talk about these different dimensions of creation and takes moments where it puts Job and his friends back on their heels a little bit. Verse 21, surely you know the answers to these questions. Surely you know all of this stuff, for you were born then, right? Oh, wait, no, you weren't. It's a use of irony. The number of your days is great. Not as great as mine. In verse 28, it says, has the rain a father, or who has begotten the drops of dew? Well, yes, the rain has a father. It is the Creator of heaven and earth. From whose womb did the ice come forth, and who has given birth to the hoarfrost of heaven? Now there's a matching image of God as mother, who gives birth to all of the wonders of creation. God is still celebrating the creation and pointing Job and his questions beyond himself. In verse 36, God's answer gets personal. He says, who has put wisdom in the inward parts? In other words, in your innards, in your soul, in your very being, or given understanding to your mind. In other words, Job, who gave you the ability to even imagine there was a God to ask questions of? Who gave you the sense that you could think and articulate? That comes from God. In verse 39, God's answer turns to the animal world. Can you hunt the prey for the lion, satisfy the appetite of young lions? A little later, can you number the months that they fulfill? And do you know the time when they give birth? The calving of the deer and the mountain goats when they give birth? Are you there when they give birth? Here's an interesting way of looking at creation we sometimes miss. Every calf that is born, every mountain goat that has a kid, God is there. When every new life comes forward from the earth, God is there. In the spring, when the flowers blossom, God is there. And Job can't be. So where do we get off asking this God all these questions? These verses continue to sing the praise of creation and to show how God is not just a clockmaker who wound up creation and let it go for itself, but that God is intimately involved in every aspect of creation and is beyond our understanding and imagining. God continues to answer Job by saying, where were you? Who are you? And are you able? And the answer is that you are but human. And chapter 40 begins, just the first two verses conclude God's address to Job. And the Lord said to Job, shall a fault finder contend with the Almighty? Anyone who argues with God must respond. A fault finder, one who has complaints. Should you contend with the Almighty? I think the answer is yes. But if you argue with God, you have to respond when God answers you back. If we listen to the words of with the ears of our hearts, if we listen and see with the eyes of our spirit, we will know the answers to the deepest questions that we have. And the answers that we come back with are going to be difficult. But we're called by God to respond. May we contemplate the greatness of God and our place in the universe. Who are we? Where are we? And what are we able to do? Amen.